My position with Jonathan is land development manager. And before I talk too much here about Jonathan, could I learn more about the group here? I understand you're from Augsburg College. Is that right?
Yeah, it's an interim study course on new towns and metropolis. And the first 5 days of the experience was spent in Columbia, Maryland.
I see.
And also some time in Washington with Jack Hunter. And then some intensive involvement with the Riverside area, kind of studying the whole new town concept, the race, form, etc.
Are you all seniors or juniors or
Everything.
mixed up? Mixed up. That's me too. I'm mixed up. Okay, fine. What primarily, at this point, did you want to know from me? Did you have an idea?
Why don't you talk as land development manager, I suppose, about what you do and what criteria you use to develop land?
Okay, fine. As land development manager, we basically get into the engineering of the elements out here. Our input into planning is essentially one of economic and perhaps advice as to whatever kind of improvements are going to be put in that they would meet accepted engineering standards. Planning does have the function of determining the general layout, what we're attempting to achieve in terms of people. When it gets down to our department, we're one of implementation. We're the ones who go out and get the grading done, get the streets in, get the water in, get the sewer in. We have to do this, and we also have to do it within certain cost limitations. The economic viability of the project, as far as our day-to-day cost operations are concerned, rests with the land development. Did you talk to somebody in a similar position at Columbia? That you recall?
Yeah, we talked with the land planner. We also talked to the colleges.
Go ahead.
Well, I think mainly what we need is just, as much kind of overview as the whole project kind of gives, the kinds of things that you think are.
Have you seen our plan at all? Has anybody talked to you about the plan, Jonathan?
We went through the exhibit center.
Okay.
It was very brief, 20 minutes worth, because they had me on.
Who else have they met with?
And they met with CIS, but other than that, that was all that's a good line of new as far as development.
I think they're more interested in the planning details and what Jonathan hopes to accomplish in the plan for a new town. And I am not a planner. It's a little difficult for me to talk with any authority on the plan itself. Essentially, the Jonathan plan, and we should have one down here, but we don't have one now. But
Is that what they have with the different
the
colors?
color of it, yeah. If you could get one, it's just us. Yeah, they probably would have one. Why don't you get one, bring it down, we can talk. We'll put it on the wall here, get a couple of pins, and we'll talk about it. But essentially, Jonathan has planned to be a town of approximately 50,000 people over a 20-year development span. And it has a nucleus of a town center surrounded by 5 villages. Each village is intended to accommodate approximately 8,000 people and have within it a village center area similar to this one that would provide the convenience store items such as they have at the supermarket over here, perhaps a dentist and a little clinic and so on. In other words, enough to take care of the day-to-day needs of the village of 7,000 to 8,000 people, but not on the scale of a regional shopping center. And in addition to the residential, the 5 residential elements in the town center, we also have industrial areas defined in our plan. And the idea here is to develop industry at a rate commensurate with the growth of your residential area, so that theoretically you're providing jobs, enough jobs to, for the head of the house to fill the residential sales that are developing along with it. And from this, you get the idea of living and working in Jonathan. Practically, as you probably would guess, I think a great deal of our people do work in the metropolitan area, so there is commuting on their part. However, I guess if you look in terms of total numbers, it does seem feasible at some time that a great percentage of the people who live in Jonathan will work in Jonathan. And in my mind, the backbone of our development, the thing that really makes us different from any other, quotation marks, new town, is the fact that we can develop a greenway network. And our greenway network is, if you look out at the project, you'll find the greenway will appear to you as a asphalt walk 6 foot wide, running throughout all of the present developed area and planned to run throughout all of Jonathan. Can you see that? Okay. Now this is the Jonathan plan itself. You are sitting in a building located right at the tip of my pencil now. This is the Lake Grace area that you see out east of this building. Immediately to the north of us is the town center complex. We propose additional dams on Lake Grace here, which will develop additional surface water areas. And the town center is the core and the hub, and there are many plans on a large scale that have been developed for that. Nothing has happened right now, but we're thinking in terms of some type of a mega structure, a very densely developed area. One of the features we have was here before we were here, is the Chicago, Milwaukee, St. Paul Pacific Railroad, which it cuts diagonally across our plan. The reason for the town center being here located on the railroad itself is a possibility in the future of providing a mass transit system and facilities from the town center core area of Jonathan into the metropolitan area, linking it. The 5 villages, this area here is approximately Village 1. Village 2 is located in an area to the north of us right here. Village 3 is out to the north and west, and it's around Lake Bavaria. Village 5 is farther to the west, and Village 4 is the area to the east of us. Hazeltine National Golf Course is within the Village 4 area. Our industrial areas are composed of one fairly large industrial complex in the northeast quadrant of our plan, more industry on the southeast corner, and an additional piece of industrial development in the far northwest quadrant of our plan. The green on this plan is generally open space, and the smaller green lines are a schematic showing where greenways are located, which provides the link I was talking about, so that people can walk from their house to the village center in any particular village. Under any arterial street, you'll find we have underpasses. There's only one place we couldn't put one in where we wanted to have one because of particular grade conditions. But we do have underpasses so the kids can ride bikes from their home along the greenway, under the roads, and to the recreation areas and the shopping areas. People can walk. The Jonathan plan itself is comprised of about 40% open area. That's of the total gross acres in our plan. 40% of it is designated at this time as open area. So we only will develop 60% of the ground that we own. Go ahead.
What's your front-end cost before you even start putting houses in?
Our front-end costs, in
Yeah.
what, in terms of dollars? That's hard to answer. We have a guarantee from HUD to guarantee $21 million worth of bonds, and this was under Title IV of the 1968 Housing Act. We have issued all $21 million of bonds right now. The front-end costs you're speaking of, I would take it, are primarily land acquisition.
And also, sewer, water, grading things that you mentioned.
It's hard to tell you what that total is. I don't know what it is. We'd have to add everything up. Typically, in a single-family detached residential neighborhood, where the lots, you're probably getting anywhere from around about 2.5 lots per acre. The improvement costs, including ground, would probably run pretty close to $5,000 a lot as a general average. Now that wouldn't include everything. And this is one of our problems, not problems, but one of the things that we have to be very careful with. When we do develop a neighborhood, we can't look in terms of just what's in that neighborhood. We've developed a lake down here. This costs X dollars. We're going to build roadways that will link that neighborhood with the rest of the development. And one of the very difficult things is to be able to cost the whole plan out and determine how you allocate that cost to the various projects you do. We are committed to the same economic mix as the I'm not sure the exact term of this. I think it's the standard metropolitan profile. Does that make sense? Okay. But we are by contract with HUD. We have said that we will attempt to develop that same economic mix in Jonathan as exists in the metropolitan area. This not only goes for economically, but from a standpoint of a person's race or religion, his ethnic background. We also are committed to develop that same profile in Jonathan. Now, we can't just, if we're going to do this, one thing we're prevented from doing is saying we have an acre here in this area, and the total cost of what we're going to do comes down to costing $5,000 an acre here. Okay, that's how much it's going to cost to do our whole plan. We got to charge at least $5,000 for that acre here. Well, over here is another acre. We can't say that that acre is worth 5 and that acre is worth 5, or will cost 5. And I'll tell you why we can't do that. If we do that, we're going to tend to develop one price range of housing, and we're not going to get this mix of salaries, and if we don't get that mix, we probably won't get the race and racial mix either in our project. So you will find that if you got into our mechanics, you will find that we have a system of allocating costs that is not, it has nothing to do with how much the land cost us. Our system of cost allocation is based upon what type of use the land is going to receive. If this is going to be a high-density subdivision in which we're going to provide homes for the, let's say, the low quartile of, from an economic standpoint, we will carry a much lower cost on that ground than we will in a subdivision over here, which is maybe in the upper quartile from an economic standpoint. The higher priced homes then, what happens, wind up paying for more of Jonathan proportionately in relation to their own lot than the neighborhoods where we're developing housing for lower income families.
What's the environmental impact of the man-made lakes?
I don't know, I just make them if they want them.
Has it been studied, or?
Yeah, before this lake was put in, we had a hydrologist and do studies on it to tell us what would happen. I don't know what the environmental impact is. To me, it's very attractive. That was a marsh at one time, and I've worked around land long enough to appreciate the tremendous ecological values of a marsh. There are more things that live in a marsh, I think, than any other type of land cover I know of. And a marsh was destroyed, but a lake was created. So I guess it depends on what you want. I'm not qualified to go on and expound upon that as far as the life chain is concerned, so on and so forth.
In a different field, are there any criteria as far as land, as to what land is more suitable for single-family detached, what land would be better for townhousing, or is it just a matter of the choice by the planner where it wants to go? Is land the basis of your decision?
We really should have a planner talking to you. See, I can tell you what criteria I would place upon it as an engineer. And as an engineer, my criteria are mostly involved in economics. In other words, which land can we develop at the lowest cost in terms of single-family detached neighborhoods or townhousing.
What's the criteria that goes into it from that standpoint, from your own standpoint as an engineer? You know, what determines what's the most economic to develop?
Well, when you get into townhousing, you get into any type of attached homes. Frankly, the flatter, the more gently sloping. Perfectly flat isn't the best, but you're usually looking for a piece of gently sloping land. You have to do a lot of grading to develop a townhouse type development in hilly, swampy, potholey type land. Unfortunately, most of our land is that way out here. And the more grading you do, the more you disturb the present ecology. The more you open yourself up for erosion and subsequent sedimentation in the lakes and streams. You just open up a whole Pandora's box with every bulldozer full of dirt that you push away. And fortunately, it's not economical to move a lot of dirt. Now, the other thing that enters into this, Jonathan has to be economically viable. We can have the best plan in the world, and we've spent a great deal of money to develop our plan, but we have to be able to live and subsist on a year-to-year basis right now. So what the market will buy at this time, to a great extent, determines what type of, which area will develop, which land use we'll look for. Now we're finding that in order to make this plan work, if you talk in terms of density as far as net developable acres are concerned, we have as far as our residential net developable acres are concerned, we have a density of somewhat in excess of 6 dwelling units per acre. This is what we need to make this plan economically viable.
Give me an idea of the density per acre, what it will be here in John.
Well, on the basis of gross acres, we have 8,000 acres approximately in our plan, and our total dwelling units that we project to develop is 16,484. So that comes out to about 2 per acre. But after you take out the open space that you want to develop, you take out the industrial areas, you take out the parks you're going to leave, the lakes you're going to leave, the street right-of-ways that you're going to leave, you wind up in excess of 6 dwelling units per acre when you consider just the ground that the residential development is going to be placed on.
Now, I'll have to measure this average. What can you get density per acre in townhouses, and what can you get in single family detached?
We use basically two density categories, one low and medium. And low is R3, R5, R7. That's 3 units per acre, 5 units per acre, 7 units per acre. Anything over 7 we classify as medium density. 3 units per acre would be a typical single-family detached subdivision in Jonathan. The fellow who wants his house on his lot so his kids can play in his yard type. 5 per acre is sort of in between. It could be accomplished by using let's say a cluster home concept, zero lot line concept, and just trying to think. We really don't. We've had one started over here in neighborhood 4. Wasn't too successful, but we would have gotten around 5 per acre on it. It was a zero lot line type development.
What do you mean when you say zero lot line?
Okay, what I mean when I say zero lot line, let's say the top of this table right here is a lot. And commonly, people build a house on a lot right there, and bring a driveway up and a garage, and then the area in front of the lot is a public space. This is sort of semi-public because everybody can see it. And in the rear, you have a private area. Now, in zero lot line, the theory is that you can bring this house right over here along the line, decrease the setback to the street to some extent, and on the next lot, you would do the same thing. Now, what happens here then, you wind up with, if you use a smaller lot, you don't waste the side yard space that you do when you put a house in the middle of the lot. Normally in a zero lot line, you wind up with a fence or some other type of arrangement down the line here to make the two areas very private, even though the lots are next to each other. And you wind up with greater private areas with a smaller lot. And that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking zero lot line. At 7, you're approaching the standard townhouse density. Center Green, right across the street is a development, townhouses. That has an overall density of about 6. Those are townhouses. So When you get above 5 into 7, you're getting into the townhouse density. Townhouses typically can be built up to maybe 10, 12 per acre, 10 per acre. And by townhouse, I mean you're building a structure attached to another structure, all the way along. And you do sell, the person who buys the townhouse does buy a lot too, but the lot is just the ground right under his building. And the ground around, you may have 6 buildings in a row, there's 6 lots. And the ground encircling the building is common area, which each individual owner owns a piece of. If you have 50 townhouses in a development, every owner would own 1/50th of the common area. That's common to all parties in that development. Then when you get to about 12 dwelling units per acre, you're into the apartment category. Apartment condominium type densities. And at about 20, you start to have to go up to get it. Yeah.
Say like when you said you own a piece of the land of the townhouse, are they then responsible for the upkeep? Like the yard, the grass?
See, they don't have any yard because it's only the land under their building itself. Now, in the common area, the yard is maintained, and this is where the Townhouse Association comes into play. The Townhouse Association is responsible for the maintenance of the common area. And typically, they will charge each person who owns a townhouse so many dollars a month. And they'll take the money then and use it to maintain, cut the grass, maybe plant a tree here and there as time goes along. And some townhouses associations even go so far as to, they collect maybe a little more money, but they wind up accumulating enough money to refinish the exteriors of the townhouses when it's needed. With a townhouse development, you have 5 buildings in a row. Even though you have 5 owners, it's pretty tough to say, excuse me, if you want to keep architectural control, to say every person can paint their own townhouse whatever color they want to keep the property value up and to keep it looking good, it's generally a good idea to have one color scheme for all 5 units. You got another question?
Well, I don't know if you deal with this, but in your town now, I'm wondering is how you deal with the automobile. The trend that we finally have to grapple with is we have to depend less on the automobile.
Mm-hmm.
How is the design of this town really enabling that to come about? Because I noticed it looks to me now, you set aside one area for all your schools, another area for your industry, you know. We're going to do an awful long walk where we have to depend on some transit form. And I'm wondering as a land developer how you grapple with it.
Well, the philosophy of the planners in regard to that, number one, excuse me, the automobile, we can't, because our society is the way it is today, we can't be too Pollyannish about it and say we're going to design this without the need for an automobile. We have nothing satisfactory at this time to replace it. The Greenway system is intended to reduce the need for an automobile. At least if we could get the standard home down to 1 car rather than 2, it would be a big help. And with the Greenway system, with the wife, the children, being able to walk within a reasonable distance to their shopping center, to the recreation areas they want to play at, chances are they can maybe get along with only 1 car. From that point on, the idea is to attempt to minimize street widths, attempt to minimize the total amount of money placed into a street system. The rapid transit thing is being worked upon. It's not a reality right now, but it is being worked on. We're on a temporary basis. We're working with the MTC to get bus service out here. We're just in no position right now to kid ourselves and say that we could develop a development out here exclusive of the need for automobiles. It just isn't in the cards right now.
Is there a plan for any internal transit system, Jonathan? Say busing?
Not to my knowledge. As the village grows and it can support an internal bus system, there'll be one. But that would occur right on the streets, that the automobiles would use. So it doesn't require any unique structures from that standpoint. Yeah.
How closely do you work with the county and the state, since you deal with putting in roads and sewer lines and things like that? How closely do you have to work?
Well, it requires very close coordination, and we have one of our vice presidents, whose name is Jules Smith. He's our general counsel also, spends most of his time working in the political municipal vein of things, working with the county, with the city, and with the state, with Metropolitan Council, to coordinate our activities with them.
Well, you basically find that you can develop a plan sometime and then say, here it is. How's it you, and they take it and do it?
They take it and do it?
Well, they're the ones that built the road up, you know?
No. We build all of our internal roadways within a subdivision, and we'll cooperate with the city to construct some of the arterial type roadways. Certain roads are designated as county roads. The county will work with the county on those. So it takes a great deal of coordination with all governmental levels. And that question would be best answered by Jules.
I understand the hard pressure to get hold of.
Yeah, he is. He's very busy. I think really, they're not scheduled to meet with any people in planning.
No. Unfortunately, I'm afraid we're going to have to take over ourselves.
Yeah, okay. All right. At the moment, we are without a planner on our staff. So you got the next best thing, and that is very good. From a planning standpoint, I'm not a planner, I'm an engineer. Okay, appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.